The people of Ashland, Kentucky used to say nothing bad ever happened in their town. A place where the biggest scandal was a late library book or a teenager sneaking beer into the quarry. But on the night of March 3rd, 2019, that illusion shattered, and the small Appalachian town would never be the same again. It began quietly, as most tragedies do. The streets were empty beneath a cold drizzle. Streetlights flickered against a film of mist, and the world seemed half asleep, unaware that somewhere in the maze of ranch-style homes, a horror was unfolding that would stain the name Reed forever. Inside a modest brick house on Tanglewood Drive, 49-year-old Mark Ellison was finishing up a late-night grading session. He was a chemistry teacher at Ashland High, the kind of teacher students trusted, neighbors waved to, and no one could ever imagine having enemies. He lived alone after a quiet divorce years earlier, filling the silence of his evenings with soft jazz and the hum of his old ceiling fan. By 10:15 p.m., the neighborhood had settled into its usual rhythm. The television glow behind curtains, the soft rumble of freight trains beyond the hills. Nothing to warn anyone that by morning the Ellison home would become a crime scene that even seasoned investigators would struggle to stomach. The 911 call came at 10:43 p.m. A neighbor reported strange noises, like furniture being dragged and someone gasping. The operator asked for details, but the line went dead after only 7 words. When patrol officers arrived 7 minutes later, the house appeared eerily undisturbed. Lights were on, the door was ajar but not forced. And then came the smell, that heavy metallic tang that no officer ever forgets. Mark Ellison was found in his living room, slumped against the sofa, his body marked by a kind of violence that defied logic. The brutality was methodical, almost ritualistic, and yet there were no signs of theft, no struggle near the entrance, no evidence of anyone breaking in or fleeing the scene. What the detectives did find, however, was a set of muddy footprints that led into the house, but not out. The following morning, Ashland Police Detective Laura Bennett stood over the scene, her gloves stained with the dust of broken calm. She had worked homicides for 16 years, but something about this one unsettled her. A sense that whoever did this didn't just want to kill, they wanted to make a point. The victim's phone was missing, so was his car key. But the strangest thing was on the kitchen counter. A single photo frame, face down. When they turned it over, they found an old class photo from Ashland High, 2017. And there, circled in red marker, was the face of Jacob Reed, a name that would soon haunt every news broadcast in Kentucky. Jacob Reed, 18 years old, high school senior, honor student, star of the debate team. He was bright, articulate, the kind of kid teachers bragged about. And Mark Ellison had been his mentor, the man who wrote him college recommendation letters, who stayed after class to help him when his grades slipped after his father left. To anyone on the outside, they were the perfect teacher and student. But inside Jacob's home, the picture was far more complicated. Jacob's mother, Caroline Reed, had been struggling for years. 3 jobs, mounting debt, and a son who had grown cold, detached. She described his eyes as hollow, like he was watching the world from underwater. When detectives arrived at her door the morning after the murder, Jacob was gone. His bed was neatly made, his backpack missing, and taped to the refrigerator door was a single sheet of notebook paper. On it, in careful handwriting, were 4 words: "He taught me too much." The manhunt stretched across 3 states. Jacob's car was spotted twice, once at a gas station in Huntington, then again near the Ohio River Bridge, heading north. He seemed to be moving with purpose, but not running, as if this was all part of something he had planned long before the blood dried. Detective Bennett and her team dug deeper into the boy's life. His computer held dozens of essays, messages, and strange diary entries about the illusion of morality, about how teachers shape obedience, not wisdom. There were even references to Ellison by name, the man Jacob called the architect of the lie. What began as a murder investigation was turning into something darker. A slow descent into the fractured mind of a boy who believed he was enlightened by destroying the man who tried to guide him. 2 days later, Jacob was found. He had walked into a state police station in Athens, Ohio, and calmly said, "You're looking for me." Officers described his demeanor as oddly polite, almost relieved, as if the entire world had finally caught up with him. During questioning, he showed no remorse. He said Ellison wasn't innocent, that he lied to students every day. When detectives asked why he killed him, Jacob only smiled and said, because he couldn't see what he was creating. Prosecutors charged him as an adult with first-degree murder. And when the trial began, the courtroom filled to capacity every single day. Neighbors, journalists, even students who once sat beside him, all trying to understand how the quiet kid with the soft voice became the monster in their midst. At first, Jacob's defense team tried the usual route: temporary insanity, emotional breakdown, loss of control. But their case began to crumble when the prosecution presented his mother's testimony. Caroline Reed, pale, trembling, her hands clenched in her lap, told the court about the night before the murder. She said Jacob had been sitting in the dark, staring at an old photo of himself and Mr. Ellison at a science fair. She remembered his words exactly. He said, "He thinks he's saving me, but he's really building my cage." When she tried to take the photo away, he told her, "Tomorrow I'll set it all free." Her testimony silenced the courtroom, and for the first time Jacob looked away, his expression collapsing into something between anger and grief. The trial lasted only 3 weeks. On the final day, when the verdict was read, guilty of murder in the first degree, Jacob didn't flinch. He just smiled faintly, as if the word guilty confirmed something he already knew. But it was his final statement that would haunt everyone who heard it. He stood, eyes empty, and said to the judge, "Everyone pretends to want truth, but when they finally see it, they call it evil. I'm just the mirror you made." Then he laughed, a quiet, broken laugh, and was led away in handcuffs as his mother wept silently in the gallery. Months later, Detective Bennett would revisit the Ellison home for one last walkthrough before it went up for sale. The carpet had been replaced, the walls repainted, but something in the air still felt wrong. She found herself standing in the same living room where Ellison died, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she whispered into the empty room, "Did you see him coming?" No one would ever truly know why Jacob Reed did what he did, whether it was resentment, delusion, or something more profound, the kind of philosophical madness that breeds only in isolation. In the end, what haunted the town most wasn't just the loss of a kind man, but the realization that the monster they feared wasn't born in some distant nightmare. He was raised right there among them, in the same classrooms, the same church pews, the same quiet streets they once believed were safe. Ashland, Kentucky never forgot. Each year, students at the high school walk past the chemistry lab plaque that still bears Mark Ellison's name. And sometimes, late at night, when a teacher stays too long after class, they swear they can hear faint footsteps in the hallway, slow, measured, deliberate, as if someone were still waiting to be taught one last lesson.